Welcome to this video where I'm gonna talk about this, the meaning of life, and this is just my take on it. There's a lot of people who have spoken on the subject before me, and this is just my take. So to start off, this question, the meaning of life, it's like, for me, inside of it, there's a hidden premise. There's some hidden assumptions inside of this question. So if you pause the video and try to think, what does this question assume? So pause the video. So now that you've paused the video and guessed, for me, this builds upon a false premise. And it goes something like this. So, whenever you're asking the meaning of something, it's usually because there's some kind of something you put in and something you get out. And if it's very clear what you put in and what you get out, then you don't ask the meaning of it. So, for instance, nobody asks, what is the meaning of cooking? Because it's very clear that you put in some work and time, and what you get out is good food and no hunger. So for me, when people ask what's the meaning of life, it's because they have a lot of this, what they put in, but they don't feel they get anything out. And I think that's very correct for most people, because life has a lot of hard work and suffering, and very little relief from suffering, very much pain. And then you can understand if your life is just pain and you never get any relief, then it would be very, very easy to think like, what's the meaning of life? There's so much I put in and I don't get anything out. So that's what I'm talking about with this premise. It's like, if only there was some higher meaning to the suffering that I'm experiencing, then it would be worth it. So it's like the reason you think about this question at all is because you're suffering too much relative to what you think to yourself that you're supposed to handle without a reason. So for me, the question behind this question is like, if you just got yourself to a point where you didn't suffer and life was fine and dandy all the time, then you wouldn't ask this question, because you would be over here all the time, having the payoff and not so much of this. So my point, which I'm just arriving at, is if you live your life in a way that makes it have a lot of meaningless work and suffering, not moving you towards the goal you actually want, and because you're stuck in this chase, always trying to get the next IKEA furniture, like the narrator from Fight Club, you know? If you're always trying to finish all the books that you're supposed to read, and always like trying to, if only I had read all the books that is on my bookshelf that I'm supposed to read, then I would be free, then I would be happy. So people are constantly in this like chase, and because they're always chasing a moving target, they never get to the point where they can have relief. So what's the meaning of life is for me not a relevant question. And that's because it builds on the premise that life is suffering. So that means if you could just solve the problem, how do I not suffer? Then this would not be relevant. Because if you're engaged in the dance of life, then you don't have time to stop and think about this. Because when you're constantly in this like state of, what do you call it, nirvana, bliss, freedom, truth, whatever you want to call it, then it's obvious. And then the other question is like, what's the meaning of life's suffering? Well, I don't know, but that's a completely different question. That's like, I think maybe the meaning of life's suffering is to give you some input that you're doing things the hard way, maybe. Because, like, if you suffer or not, it's all in your head. Like, how your mindset is and what you're doing and what you're chasing. And if, like, you're constantly just trying to buy things to make you happy or something like that, that's like a chase that will never end. And in that case, you're suffering because you're literally preventing yourself from being happy by engaging in things that you maybe think are relevant but are not. Like, seriously, think about it. Let's say all the things that are hanging over you, all the to-do lists, all the books that you're supposed to read or the movies that you want to watch, all these things that like you accumulate of things that you're supposed to do because like, I should have read, Moby Dick because I'm supposed to be, a literary person or whatever. As long as you haven't read that book, then you're, then you have like a pact with yourself not to be happy, not to relax, not to enjoy life. And then you think maybe like, but you haven't really thought this through though. It's like, but if all the books and all the things I was supposed to do was finished, what would I want to do with my life? Because the problem is, if you don't think about what I really want, then when you get to the point when you finish Moby Dick and you finish your lists, then you just like go on the internet and somebody's like, Grapes of Wrath is one of those classic novels. And suddenly it appears on your bookshelf and like, fuck, I have to read this book before I can be happy. And then rinse and repeat for your entire life, and you will never get whatever you want. And you would wonder, what is the meaning of this meaningless chase? Why do I suffer needlessly? And that's the reason is that you're doing things that are not moving you towards what you want. And the second part of that problem is you don't know what you want. So it would be more productive if you stopped everything you're doing and thought really deeply, what do I want to do? What is it actually I want to dedicate my life to? If I didn't have to do anything at all, what is it I still would be doing? And then focus on that. Instead of trying to like live up to society's norms about what you're supposed to want, what you're supposed to have, what you're supposed to care about. Because that will never give you any lasting peace. It will just be an empty chase. And this like examining of the purpose of things, I think is one of the most important things you can think about in this life. Because it's like, if somebody says to you, we have to check the bus tables. And then you ask, why do we have to do that? And they say, we have to take the bus to the store so we can... and then you ask, why do we have to take the bus to the store? And then you answer, and then they answer, we have to get to the store. And I can be like, I have a car. We don't need like all those extra steps you're adding in. They're not needed. And then but you can still go beyond that. Like, but why do you want to get to the store? I want to buy candy. So it's like, we have snacks right here. You don't need to go anywhere. So like, if you don't know what you really want, you always like introduce these extra steps. And you can use your entire life doing these extra steps. And then it's like, but why do you even want to buy candy to begin with? Well, because I feel I deserve it because I suffer so needlessly all the time. And then you like reach the same question. Why do I suffer needlessly? Well, what do you want? I don't know. Well, then you have to figure that out first.